that. And Ptah's in agreement with that. Okay, Billy, if you really can't do the public speaking, then work with Hans. But it's not happening. So Billy's pressured one more time to, again, get out and do public speaking, which he has not done so far. Okay, Billy's returned to Earth, and a little time goes by before the next contact. There were a couple of short contacts telepathically. Actually, what happened for about the next month was that transmissions were sent to him by Ascot, who he has just reconnected with out in space, to help him get all of his notes together about his contacts in the 50s and 60s. And they are so extensive that I'm going to devote the next tape to that, so I'm going to kind of skip by that part right now and go on a little bit with Billy's other contacts here, and finish this tape up, and then the next tape will devote to Billy's travels with Ascot and so forth. So we're going to jump ahead to September 12th in 1975 for Billy's 33rd contact. This one was kind of interesting because when Semjase arrived, Billy had some things to tell her. He says that he had just witnessed the night before a beam ship of some type was hovering around the house, and he'd seen it on several occasions in the general area. And he couldn't make any mental contact with it. It didn't seem to be Plejadian, but he couldn't understand who it was. Semjase remarked to him, well, these are the ships of the Befath people that we'd mentioned earlier, that she was quite sure that they were watching Billy, probably planning on even kidnapping him. And Billy was a little surprised. He says, they would kidnap me? And she says, yes, that they knew that Billy was being contacted. They knew that he was being helped to be the prophet of our time, that they were having a lot of extensive contacts with him, that he was learning a lot of information, and this was directly going against their mission of controlling the planet. They really didn't want somebody coming along and telling the truth and helping organize people, that this was not in their best interest. So she was quite sure that they were probably up to no good and probably going to try to kidnap him, and suggested to Billy that he be very careful around them, and not to, if they sent him any telepathic information, to come out or have a contact with them, to not do that, because he could probably would never be heard from again. That it was generally their normal MO to like attract people to the ships, telling them if they were in touch with God or if they were in touch with Jesus, whatever, and that they were gods and so forth, and they were sent here on behalf of a god. That was their general mode of operation, that the Earth people were very susceptible to that they could be drawn into their ships quite easily and drawn into their control very easily by telling Earth people that they were somehow here on behalf of some god or on behalf of Jesus. And the many people, especially the Christians, were quite prone to believing that, wanting to believe it, and this would allow the Befath actually to control them and build up their own followers here on Earth. Well, after that was explained to him, Billy says, well, a friend of his named Jakob had received a letter from some other man who claimed that he'd been in touch with a being from Alpha Centauri some time back. And the man had gone to the trouble of describing all about these contacts and this being from Alpha Centauri, and Billy wanted to know if it was true. And Semjase says, yes, it is. We're aware of these contacts, and we know of this man. He's one of the genuine contactees, but they didn't give his name, and the name wasn't in the letter. She did say it was true, that the being was from Alpha Centauri, and that his name was, spelled S-E-F-H, Seth. It's kind of like Spath and all these other names you're hearing. Most of these names I don't think are very accurate, either the names of the people or the names of the planet. I think they're mostly just labels given to us by the Pleiadians for reference, or they're names that Billy uses and so forth, whatever, just to label things. So we're not real sure about these actual names. But it says this being from Alpha Centauri was here for 11 months. And that it was some time back. It was before 1975, before Billy's contacts had actually started with the Pleiadians. But this man had written to Billy through Jakob because the being from Alpha Centauri, who understood how to look into the future and see things, told the man during his 11 months of contacts that there would be contacts between the Pleiadian race and Billy starting at this time. And that's why the man had written. His contacts were actually over and had been discontinued. Apparently what had happened, the being from Alpha Centauri, seeing the problems on planet also, much like the Pleiadians had decided to try to help out and feed information into our society also through this gentleman. Spent some time educating him, much like Semjase had been educating Billy, but the man decided not to come forward, pretty much like Billy had. Billy didn't want to come forward either into the public arena. This man had decided that he would not do it, and so the contact stopped, and the being from Alpha Centauri gave up the idea and returned home. But the contacts were real. Billy right away wanted to know who this guy was. And Semjase remarked, no, that it would not be fair for us to tell you who this man is, because he's already made his own decision to be private, and they respect that. Well, and Billy said that he would, how about if he just went to meet him? And she again remarked that no, he'd made the decision of his own free will now to not come out into the public arena any longer, and they were going to respect that. We're all on our own path of evolution, and they were not going to violate that. Well, Billy had received some information from another UFO group from Berlin, and these people were followers of something called the Ashtar Command, and he wanted to know about this, and wanted to know if Semjase had any information about this Ashtar Command outside of Berlin. And Semjase says, well, we have some information, but not too much. We've been looking into ourselves, and they really didn't know much about it. And Billy says, well, come on, surely you know something. She says, well, all we know so far is that these people in Berlin are part of what's called the Thule Society, Thule. And this is a very old society that has done a lot of damage on the planet. The Thule Society itself are Earth people, but they are influenced by some outside extraterrestrial force. And the Pleiadians have been trying to figure out where this was coming from. They'd been trying to figure out where the thoughts were coming from. They had searched our planet, a parallel planet, other dimensions, and quizzed other life forms that were coming here, and could not figure out exactly where the source of these mental images were coming from that was controlling this Thule Society in Berlin. But she says it dates back a long ways, because the Thule Society was they were the people that were involved in controlling Hitler. They were one of the main reasons where Hitler took the wrong path with his changing of the world that he was intent upon, and went the way that he did and kind of fell to the dark side of things. But they'd been trying to trace these energies and could not really do it so far. All they could tell was that the thoughts were coming directly into Germany, into this Thule Society, and that they were trying to find out the source of it. And if they did, they'd sure let Billy know a little bit about it. Ashtar was somehow connected with this, but they really hadn't figured out who this Ashtar person was. In my magazine I used to put out, I had a section I called The Mysteries of Earth, because there are a lot of unexplained mysteries like the pyramids, the Bermuda Triangle, Easter Island, things like this that traces of unusual things that have happened on our planet that we really don't have any explanation of. Well, quite often Billy would ask questions about them, and most of all those mysteries have been explained at one point or the other. I'm just going to go over one or two of them here on the tape. The Great Pyramid, by the way, which we'll find out later on, was actually built by the Fath 75,000 years back. But right now I want to talk a little bit about the Bermuda Triangle, because its cause and its origin are really quite unusual. The Bermuda Triangle, we've all heard these unusual stories about ships disappearing, boats, airplanes, people, and so forth. A lot of strange phenomena over the past several hundred years. Well, Semjase remarked that yes, it's true, there has been a lot of disappearances. To begin with, she says it has nothing to do with the devil. Many people are mistakenly relating